Now, one more question then. I've heard it said that, with the sedevacantist people, they are at a dead end because of the fact that when or where will the next pope come from?
Well, we had a whole debate on this in which we addressed this issue in detail, but the simple answer to your question is that for the first millennium of the Church, the Roman clergy elected the the Roman clergy elected the Pope before there was a College of Cardinals.
Yes.
And so that proves that that's a valid way of obtaining a Pope.
Okay.
So it's possible that could be done again.
All right, but by the fact that you haven't had a Pope, you say, let's say, since when did Pius XII died in, 62, 64?
1958.
58, okay. So you believe you haven't had a Pope since 58, which is now 50 years.
Correct.
Has there ever been a time that there's been no Pope for that long? No.
No, but there are prophecies about that. Okay, and also, if the Great Western Schism witnessed a massive period of confusion, which all papal historians say was the worst crisis, or at least one of the worst, but a lot of them describe it as the worst crisis in the whole history of the Church, that some people didn't see a way out of it. It was so bad, the level of confusion. 3 religious superiors in certain orders, 3 bishops in certain dioceses, 3 men claiming to be the popes. They didn't see any way out of it. If that was just like a prelude to what God will allow in the great apostasy, because it will be an apostasy so great that there will be hardly any faith left on earth.
Right. That
it's not at all incompatible with Catholic teaching that he would leave in an extended interregnum. And actually, that's why in our material we quote this Father O'Reilly, who's a theologian. He says you could have a papal vacancy for decades. Okay, and also, basically that seems to be the punishment God has inflicted. But here's the thing: if these guys are the popes,
yes,
there is no more Catholic Church. Okay, because they have officially taught and enforced heresy. Okay, that's a fact. There's no way around that. I know a lot of people immediately jump at this, but Vatican II, okay, and you just have to hear me out. If Paul VI was a pope, is a binding ecumenical council. There's no way around that. A lot of people say it was pastoral, okay, not infallible. That's a myth. Yeah.
I believe it was not infallible.
On what ground?
Just from what I've heard or what I've read.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying to you is what you've heard is not correct. Okay. Paul VI confirmed Vatican II in a way that's equally or more solemn than the earliest councils of the Church were confirmed. Okay, he said that everything in it on faith or morals to be religiously observed by all the faithful.
And yet, they gave options to people. After Vatican II, you weren't absolutely obliged, I understand, to say the new Mass. You could say either or.
That's not true.
There's a lot of discrepancies in Vatican II.
Well, that's a separate issue, but even that's not correct. Paul VI himself, in his 1976 address concerning Lefebvre, he actually speaks about Lefebvre. We have this in our book. This book you'd get with a special. It addresses all these points. Okay, we specifically researched all these points, and for instance, in his address, May 24th, 1976, Paul VI speaks of Lefebvre, and he's talking about this opposition, and he's criticizing it. And he says, the placing of themselves outside of obedience and communion with the successor of Peter, and therefore outside the Church. This is unfortunately the logical consequence, speaking of his actions. He goes on to talk about what Lefebvre says. And he says, it is even affirmed that the Second Vatican Council is not binding, that the faith would be in danger because of the reforms. And he says, such an attitude sets itself up as the judge of the divine will, which placed Peter at the head of the Church. And he goes on, the adoption of the new order missae, meaning the new Mass, is certainly not left to the free choice of priests or faithful. And he goes, the new order was promulgated to take the place of the old, following upon the request of the Second Vatican Council. In no different way did our holy predecessor Pius V make obligatory the missal that he promulgated. So, It's a myth that Paul VI never bound the new Mass. It's a myth that he never made Vatican II binding. He definitely did. There's also something called the Ordinary and Universal Magisterium. Okay, the Church, the Magisterium is exercised either in its solemn capacity when a Pope proclaims a truth of faith or morals with extraordinary language, or when something is been made clear, okay, to the universal Church in language such as like a Pope indicates that the Catholic Church has always believed this, and so on. Well, the idea that the hierarchy of the Vatican II Church, that it's, quote, popes, it's bishops, don't believe that Vatican II is the teaching of the Magisterium. Paul VI says that. Every bishop who holds jurisdiction in the Novus Ordo Church would say that. If you ask them, is Vatican II an ecumenical council? They would say yes, every single one of them. If it's an ecumenical council, then that means that its declarations on faith or morals are teachings of the Church. But it also contains solemn language at the end of every document. That's a fact that a lot of people don't know.
Okay.
But don't get me wrong here. Paul VI was totally evil. He's one of the most evil men, in our view, to have walked on earth. My point is simply this, that if people are going to say that he's the Pope, okay, they can't have it both ways. You can't say that he's the Pope, operate outside of this Vatican II hierarchy, and say that Vatican II is not a binding council. Doesn't work. Okay, that's why the only consistently Catholic position is the state of constitution. It's the true position, without any question. And this is not even getting into the fact that these guys are all manifest heretics.
Okay.
Benedict XVI says teaches we do not need to convert Protestants or Eastern Schismatics.
Yeah. That's
a fact. In our Heresy of the Week column, which we update, basically weekly, every week he's praising the leaders of schismatic sects.
Okay. Now, I'll ask you then, how do you think that one day we will have another Pope then, according to your standards?
I don't know. I don't believe it's required. We might, but it's possible that this vacancy could be basically what will persist until Christ comes, which we believe that, this is not occurring in Rome just as another crisis, we believe. We believe it's clear that we're in the last days here.
Okay.
And that's clear not only from what's going on in Rome, but basically
Okay, so you believe we're nearing the end of the world?
Oh, yeah, I believe we're very...
How about this? You know about Fatima, and you must believe in that, right?
Yes, I do.
And you believe in La Salette.
Correct.
Now, the thing is this. Both in The Secret of La Salette and in Fatima, they talk about the era of peace. At La Salette, Our Lady distinguishes that it's going to be 25 years. And she says, then again, men will fall and whatever, da-da-da. So the thing is, this era of peace will come, and Our Lady said that the Pope has to consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and it's got to be done in union with all of them.
Yeah, I actually wrote a whole article on this. Okay, so I'm...
Then on top of that, our Lord said to Sister Lucy, I believe it was her in particular, he says that the consecration will take place. He either said it will be late or very late.
Yeah, I know. What I'm saying to you is all these points are addressed in my whole article on this, which is in our book.
So
it's called The Whole Truth About the Consecration and Conversion of Russia. And this, again, is another point that a lot of people, since they've been brainwashed on this issue, they immediately reject the facts. It's sort of like when someone tells them about sedevacantism. They've been so brainwashed that they don't even hear the person out before rejecting it, okay? And so I actually believed what you were saying originally until I made a detailed study of the issue.
Okay.
All right, and I looked...
What did you find, basically?
Well, what I found was... Can you hold on one sec? I just have... Yeah.
Prayer transforms heart.
Sorry about that. One of the things I studied was Frere Michel's 3-volume work, The Whole Truth About Fatima.
Yes, okay.
Okay, and I was looking for any evidence that Our Lady ever indicated, or our Lord, to Sister Lucy, or anywhere in any of the revelations, that the promise about the conversion of Russia indicated that the entire nation would be converted to the Catholic faith.
Okay.
There's no indication of that whatsoever anywhere. And in fact, the evidence is very much to the contrary, that the use of conversion, not only in the July 13th message, But in Lucy's own understanding of that afterward does not mean that the entire nation will be converted to the Catholic faith.